This is no way of handling such an agitation. ये इनकलाब है सर, ये रेवोल्यूशन है.
हमारी देश की सरकार भी कभी बोला करती थी जय जवान जय किसान, ना कि अब की तरह जाओ जवान मारो किसान. The farmers' protest has been gaining momentum every day, and it seems like there is no end in sight until and unless the government gives in to the demands of the protesters. किसान दिल्ली के द्वार पे खड़ के ये चिल्ला चिल्ला के सरकार से सवाल पूछ रहे हैं कि क्या थी हमारी गलती कि आपने इस तपतपाती ठंड में हम पर वाटर कैनन्स चलाए? क्या थी हमारी गलती कि आपने हमारे ऊपर आंसुओं गैस की गोलियां बरसाई? क्या थी हमारी गलती कि आपकी गोदी मीडिया हमें आतंकवादी, खालिस्तानी और पाकिस्तानी बुलाती है? क्या हमारी सरकार ये सच में भूल गई है कि अब भी 2020 में किसान को इस देश का अन्नदाता माना जाता है? तो आइए इन टुडेज वीडियो लेट्स decode the farmers protest and seek to find the answers to many burning questions like why are the farmers protesting, what are their demands, and what are they most afraid of. My name is Amir and you are watching The Upfront. June 2020, ordinances, temporary laws were introduced by the government which dealt with agriculture produce, their sale, contract farming reforms, etc. etc. September 14, 2020, ordinances were introduced as bills and by September 17th were also passed by the Lok Sabha. September 20, bills were passed by the Rajya Sabha as well. September 27th, President gives his assent to the bills, thereby turning them into acts. September 28, 2020, a gazetteer notification about the 3 laws was published. Yes, this was literally how fast the bills were passed. In a matter of less than 2 weeks, without any democratic process or discussion, the farm bills were bulldozed into becoming laws. Protests went on for 2 months, and when the farmers realized it was time now to knock on the doors of the government, therefore, on 26 November, thousands of trolleys, tractors and trucks equipped with all the essential commodities of stuffs, blankets, utensils and food which could last them for a year. And food, bhai sahab, of course you all know about the tasty langars where nobody goes hungry. After the passing of these bills, many farmer unions began holding local protests, mostly in the states of Punjab and Haryana. These 2 states are widely considered as agricultural powerhouses of our country, as these are the very 2 states who contributed the most to the success of the Green Revolution. To prevent the farmers from entering Delhi, trenches were dug up, barricades were set up, and heavy deployment of police personnel was ensured on different highways connecting Delhi. After the failure of many rounds of talks with the government, the farmers have planned and have decided that they are here to stay.
देर तक यहाँ पर रहने की तैयारी करके आए।
हम 1 साल लग जाए, 2 साल लग जाए, 3 साल लग जाए, जब तक हमारे में दम है हम जहाँ रहेंगे।
Let's take a closer look at what exactly these farm laws are. First law is the Farmer Produce Trade and Commerce Act of 2020. This law allows farmers to sell their produce anywhere without the use of any state-regulated mandis. They can directly sell their produce to private buyers without paying any tax. Let me tell you what these mandis actually are. Mandis are basically the middle agents who buy the entire farm produce from the farmers at a fixed price and then sell it to the private companies at a slightly higher price. Let me give you an example. 1 kilogram of wheat is taken from the farmer at ₹10. The mandis then sell it to the private companies at ₹20. And then the private companies sell it to the consumers, that is you and me, for ₹30. This law states that there won't be any middlemen and that the farmer can directly sell his produce to the big corporates without the additional burden of paying taxes. For a normal person like you and me, this may seem like a very good, but isme dikkat kya hai? I shall explain it later. Second law is the Farmers' Agreement of Price Assurance. This law states that the farmers have the total freedom to deal with the corporates directly on the basis of contract farming. Even before the harvest, these companies get into contract with the farmers. You may say, this is also very nice. Let me come back to this a bit later. Third law is the Essential Commodities Act of 2020. This law basically removes the restriction on hoarding, which was previously a punishable offense. Under this law, private companies can hoard as much as they want and thereby control the supply of essential commodities. If you see more closely, you will see that the three laws are actually more beneficial for the farmers. But we have to see the finer details of the laws in order to understand why the farmers are protesting. The farmers are afraid that the removal of state-regulated mandis will also eventually lead to the removal of the use of minimum support price. What is minimum support price? MSP is the minimum price the government fixes in order to purchase the farm produce directly from the farmer in order to assure him of a minimal profit. But the farmers are afraid that the big corporates will slowly capture the entire market and remove MSP, thereby resulting in a monopoly. The corporates can do whatever they wish to do when it comes to pricing, storing and making a huge profit. इससे ये होगा कि किसान अपनी खुद की फसल पर, अपनी मेहनत की कमाई पर दाम नहीं लगा सकता। तो किसान के पास बस दो ही ऑप्शन रहेंगे. He either sells it for half the price or stores it somewhere in order for it to rot and decay. The government says that the farmers will have the upper hand in choosing their markets and that the MSP system will continue. But the farmers fear that the removal of the mandis will lead to the end of minimum support price until and unless there is a legal guarantee that the purchase of farm produce will not take place below the fixed price. And there is a huge possibility that the farmers will have no choice but to sell their produce to these corporates no matter what price they give. And also, the law says that the farmers can withdraw from the contract without paying any penalty. But the problem lies in the fact that in this, farmers have everything to lose. The reason is because in case of any dispute between the corporates and the farmers, the law has no provisions for the farmer to go to the court in order to get justice, but rather can only go up until SDM or DC, which is Sub-Divisional Magistrate or the Deputy Commissioner for resolving the disputes. And it is obvious that these Sarkari Babus will of course be under the control of the government, and in the future, the farmers are afraid that in case there are disputes, then these big corporates, with the help of their muscle and money power, will bribe these officials and turn the cases against the farmers themselves. Lastly, the government has removed the limit on hoarding. This enables big corporate companies to buy essential commodities and hoard them in order to sell it for a higher price whenever there is a shortage. This is not rocket science or too difficult to understand. The person who controls the supply of the commodity also controls its price. Eventually, this is what the farmers are afraid of. If the food chain is controlled by the big companies, then there is a high possibility that essential foods will only be available in malls and supermarkets, which is ultimately controlled by, you know the answer. Well, the demands of the protesting farmers are quite simple. They want the government to convene a special parliament session and repeal all the three laws along with giving a legal status to minimum support price. और साथ ही साथ ये भी चाहते हैं कि जितने भी सारे किसान पकड़े हैं उनको सब रिहा कर दें. Along with that, the farmers have also used their platform in order to demand the release of all the activists, intellectuals and the anti-CAA protesters who were arrested by the government. And also, they want the government to reduce the price of the diesel, which has increased by almost 50%. और एक बात, और आप देख ही रहे हैं कि किसानों कैसे अंबानी और अडानी को निशाना लगाकर कह रहे हैं कि इन तीनों लॉज में इन दोनों का ही कॉन्स्पिरेसी है ताकि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर पर पूरी तरीके से इनका कब्जा हो जाए. इंडिया में 29 स्टेट्स हैं जिसके हर एक स्टेट के अलग अलग रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस होते हैं और यहाँ पे बिग कॉर्पोरेट कंपनीज कैन नॉट गो एंड डील विद इंडिविजुअल स्टेट्स according to that state's rules and regulations. That is the reason why the corporates have also been pushing for one nation and one market.
अब किसान को तय प्लान के अनुसार वो निर्यात कर सकता है, भंडारण कर सकता है और एक वन नेशन वन मार्केट के दिशा में हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं.
Therefore, you guys can see that the government is completely playing into the hands of the big corporate companies. 2006 में बिहार की सरकार ने सारे एपीएमसी मंडीज को पूरी तरीके से हटा दिया. अगर आप प्रदर्शन करते हुए किसान को जाकर पूछेंगे कि भाई साहब बिहार के किसानों की क्या हालत है, तो वो बताएगा कि जो बिहार के किसान हैं जिनके लिए 2006 में कानून लागू किए गए थे, वही किसान 14 साल बाद आके हमारे खेतों में मजदूरी कर रहा है. So the protesting farmers are afraid that their condition may also ultimately become like the farmers of Bihar. Well, all across the world, there have been widespread protests in support of the farmers. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also expressed his support with the agitating farmers. Several Australian Labour leaders like Rob Michel and Russell Watley have spoken in support of the farmers' protest after the Indian diaspora held several protests in Australia and New Zealand. Many British members of parliament have also expressed their support in favour of farmer protests. Dekhiye, it is very essential that the government addresses the demands of the farmers because many rounds of talks with the government have failed. It is high time for the government to reconsider its adamant stand and give an opportunity to the farmers to exercise their democratic right to protest peacefully. When the state has no other way to understand dissent but only to criminalize it, then what do you expect the aggrieved people to do? और याद रखिएगा, नई संसद के दीवारें सेंट्रल विस्टा की बहुत बड़ी बनाई जा रही हैं और किसानों का तो छोड़ो, आपकी आवाज भी वहां तक पहुंचना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगी. All in all, this farmer movement has now forged strong unity between different groups of the society. And now, dear viewers, this struggle is not just for justice and democracy, but rather it is for the most important thing of them all, the struggle for dignity. If you like the content which we provide, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to get notifications from the upfront.